Welcome to the deep dive, where we kind of dig into research and articles, the stuff you send our way and try to pull out the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And today we're looking at this randomized clinical trial from Jamina that looked at using large language models in, medical diagnoses.
Yeah. Really timely study, I think, with, so many health systems just kind of throwing LLM-powered tools out there without any real guidance.
Oh, yeah. And this study basically looked at, if we give doctors access to LLMs, does it actually make them better at diagnosing things?
Exactly. And they didn't just look at whether or not the doctors got the diagnosis right in the end. They actually really focused on how they got there.
Oh, interesting.
Like the quality of the reasoning.
Okay.
And they used this thing called structured reflection.
There's that.
So basically, it's a way to make the doctors really explain their thought process.
Okay.
So they had to list their top 3 diagnoses, then what evidence they had for or against each one, and then, of course, their final diagnosis and what they would do next for the patient.
So it's more about their process than just did you get the right answer?
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so this study, it involved 50 physicians from some pretty top-notch U.S. medical institutions.
Yeah.
Stanford, Beth Israel, U of Virginia.
Yeah, really big names.
Yeah. And mostly internal medicine docs, but there were a few from emergency and family med too.
Yeah, they wanted to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, so they gave them 6 complex clinical cases.
Yeah.
And the cases themselves were really interesting.
Yeah.
They were chosen specifically to remove jargon and obvious clues. So it was a real challenge.
Yeah, they don't want to make it easy on them.
No.
So basically, half of these docs had access to ChatGPT Plus, which is the GPT-4 version.
Okay.
Along with all their usual resources, up-to-date Google, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And then the other half, they only had access to those conventional resources, no LLMs allowed.
So they really wanted to see the difference.
Exactly, a head-to-head.
Yeah.
So what did they find?
Yeah, what did they find?
Well, this is the surprising part. There was actually no statistically significant difference in how well the 2 groups diagnosed the cases.
Oh, wow.
Just giving them access to an LLM didn't magically make them better.
Huh. Interesting. With all this hype around LLMs and healthcare, that is kind of surprising.
Yeah, it really makes you think about, what we're expecting from these tools, and maybe we're not quite using them, right?
Yeah, and I guess we'll dig into that more, but there's also this big twist in the study.
Yeah.
They also had the LLM try the cases itself.
Right.
They gave it the information and had it work through it.
Exactly. They used really carefully designed prompts, of course.
Uh-huh.
But get this, in that separate analysis, the LLM actually did significantly better than either group of doctors.
Oh, wow. So it can do it?
It can, but there's clearly a disconnect between that potential and how doctors are actually using it right now.
Right. So it's not just about having the tool, it's about how you use it.
Exactly. It's a whole new skill set we need to think about.
Okay, well, let's dive into the study's methods a little bit more, and then we can really unpack what this all means.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
It's important to point out, though, that any study, this one has its limitations.
Right.
One big one is that they only use ChatGPT Plus, the GPT-4 version.
Yeah, and while ChatGPT Plus is, pretty accessible these days, and a lot of healthcare systems are using it, it's just one LLM.
Right. Exactly. So what we're seeing here might not apply to other LLMs out there that could be just as good or even better.
Right. And also, they didn't give the doctors any specific training on how to actually use ChatGPT effectively.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So it's kind of like giving them this powerful tool, but no instruction manual.
Exactly. And that's often how it is in the real world, right?
Yeah, new tools get thrown at you all the time.
You're just expected to figure it out.
Yeah. And, do you think that lack of training could have really skewed the results?
It's definitely possible. Maybe with the right guidance on how to interact with the LLM, the doctors could have used it way more effectively.
Yeah, and we don't really know exactly how they were using it either.
Right. All we have are the chat logs, but we don't know what kinds of questions they were asking or how well they were crafting their prompts.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see.
It would, because then we could get a sense of, were they using it to its full potential?
Right, yeah.
Or were they maybe limiting themselves by not asking the right questions?
Right, and the cases themselves, you said they were chosen for complexity and realism, so tell me a bit more about them.
Well, they actually adapted the cases from this really cool study in the 1990s that was looking at computer-based diagnostic systems way back then.
Wow.
And they chose these cases because they were deliberately challenging, with complicated presentations, lots of possible diagnoses.
So not like your straightforward textbook cases.
No, not at all. These were meant to really mimic the complexities that doctors face in real-world practice.
Yeah, where things are rarely clear-cut.
Exactly. You have to sift through all this information, weigh the evidence.
Right, and on top of that, they also modified the cases to make sure there wasn't any medical jargon or anything that would make it too easy.
Right, they really wanted to test the doctor's reasoning abilities.
So it was all about, can you connect the dots? Can you make sense of this information?
Yeah, exactly.
And this whole structured reflection thing that they use to evaluate the reasoning, that seems pretty innovative.
Yeah, it is. I think it has a lot of potential beyond just this research.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, imagine using it in medical training or for continuing education.
Oh, interesting.
By having doctors actually articulate their thought process, you can really get insights into their decision-making.
Yeah, it's like seeing inside their heads.
Exactly, and you can see if they're considering all the relevant information, if they're weighing the evidence appropriately.
Maybe even identify any biases they might have.
Exactly, so it's not just about getting the right answer, it's about understanding how they got there.
And then improving that process.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable tool.
So going back to the study's findings, the fact that the LLM on its own actually outperformed the physicians, that's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is.
What does that mean for the future of LLMs in diagnostics?
Well, on the one hand, it definitely shows the huge potential that LLMs have in this field.
Right, they can process so much data, see patterns that we might miss.
Exactly. They can make connections that we wouldn't even think of.
But we can't get too carried away, right?
No, we have to be cautious about over-interpreting these findings.
Because the LLM was in this controlled setting with perfectly crafted prompts.
Right. It wasn't dealing with the messiness of real-world clinical practice.
So we can't just assume that throwing LLMs into hospitals will automatically lead to better diagnoses?
No, we still need human oversight, clinical judgment, and of course that all-important doctor-patient relationship.
So it's more about collaboration than replacement?
Exactly. LLMs should be tools to enhance physician skills, not replace them.
Right. And the study also found that using the LLM didn't really save the doctors any time.
Yeah, although they did say they felt less stressed.
Oh, interesting.
Which I think is worth noting.
Yeah, definitely.
The authors acknowledge that they would need a much bigger study to really determine if LLMs can actually step up diagnosis.
But the stress reduction, that's pretty intriguing.
It is. It suggests that LLMs might have benefits beyond just accuracy.
Right. They could actually improve physician well-being.
Exactly. And that's something we need to explore further.
Yeah, because if you have happier, less stressed doctors, that's good for everyone.
Absolutely. It can lead to better patient care overall.
And of course, we can't forget about the issue of access.
Right.
Not every healthcare system has the resources to implement these fancy new technologies.
Exactly. And that's a real concern because we don't want LLMs to end up widening existing healthcare disparities.
Right. We need to make sure that everyone has access to these tools if we want to use them responsibly.
Absolutely. It's about equity.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's about the whole ecosystem around it.
Exactly. The funding, the infrastructure, the training.
And the ethical considerations, too.
Oh, absolutely. We can't forget about those.
So this whole thing with LLMs in healthcare, it's really complex.
It is. There are so many factors to consider.
But this JAMA study, it's a really good starting point for these conversations.
It is. It gives us a lot to think about.
Yeah, we need to be excited about the potential, but also realistic about the challenges.
Exactly. A balanced perspective is key.
Well, this has been incredibly enlightening.
It has.
So before we wrap up, let's just take a moment to really reflect on the study's main findings and what they mean for the future of healthcare.
Yeah, good idea.
So much to think about with this JAMA study. It
Yeah.
really does make you question like what we think we know about AI in medicine. And like you said, that balanced perspective,
Yeah.
it's key.
It's not a magic bullet, right?
No magic bullet.
LLMs have a ton of potential, but it's about using them the right way.
Right, don't just throwing them in and hoping for the best.
Exactly.
It's like this whole new era of medicine is emerging,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like human intelligence and artificial intelligence working together.
Yeah.
What do you think about where LLMs in healthcare are headed, like in the next 5-10 years?
Ooh, prediction time.
Yeah, crystal ball time. Well, it's tough to say for sure, but I do think LLMs are going to become like a routine part of healthcare.
Yeah.
They'll be everywhere.
Okay, so paint me a picture. What does that actually look like?
Okay, so imagine you're a doctor. You're seeing a patient.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this LLM-powered system right there with you, and it's helping you come up with potential diagnoses.
Okay.
But it's not just spitting out answers.
Right.
It's also like prompting you to consider things you might have missed.
Like biases, blind spots?
Exactly.
Or like maybe there's something subtle in the patient's history that you didn't pick up on.
Right, or it could be analyzing their electronic health records,
Mm-hmm.
looking for patterns, anomalies.
That we wouldn't even know. Right, things that could point to early signs of disease.
So it's like having this incredibly smart assistant who's always on.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Always there to help you think things through.
But the control still rests with the doctor.
Absolutely.
The doctor's still making the decisions.
It's about augmenting human expertise.
Right? Not replacing it.
Exactly.
And of course, as we get more and more into this world of LLMs, we can't forget about the challenges.
Yeah, the potential downsides.
The ethical consideration.
Exactly. This study didn't really focus on those, but they're huge.
Yeah, huge.
We have to make sure that these LLMs are developed and used responsibly.
Right.
We need transparency, accountability. We need to make sure they're not biased.
And we have to make sure everyone has access.
Yes, equity is crucial.
We don't want LLMs to just benefit those who can already afford the best healthcare.
We need to make sure everyone benefits.
So it's a lot more than just the technology itself.
It's a whole societal shift.
It is.
A whole new way of thinking about healthcare.
Well, this JAMA study, it's definitely given us a lot to chew on.
It has.
It's like a little glimpse into the future.
And it's a future that's full of possibilities, but also potential pitfalls.
Yeah, so we need to be thoughtful.
We need to be careful.
But also excited.
Definitely excited.
This is groundbreaking stuff.
It is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights.
What pleasure.
And to everyone listening out there, keep those questions coming. Keep the conversation going because this is just the beginning.
Yeah, the future of healthcare is being written right now.
And we all have a role to play in shaping it. So thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.